Coming up on Mac Break Weekly, Leo Laporte is out, but I, Micah Sargent, am here, and we have a great show planned for you. Andy Anatko, Renee Ritchie, and the Lisa Schmeiser are here to talk all things Apple. We start with Siri no longer defaulting to a female-sounding voice and talk about voice assistants in general. We also talk about Apple adding a bunch of new games to Apple Arcade and its strategy there going forward, plus privacy and security online with lots of changes and Snapchat trying to circumvent Apple's new privacy policy, plus AR, and Tim Cook's thoughts on AR. It's all that plus so much more coming up on Mac Break Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Mac Break Weekly, episode number 760, recorded Tuesday, April 6th, 2021. Digital Concierge. This episode of Mac Break Weekly is brought to you by Amazon Pharmacy. Amazon Prime members can save on prescription medication when not using insurance and get free 2-day delivery. Learn more at amazon.com/MacBreak. Welcome to Mac Break Weekly, the show where we talk all things Apple all the time, except when we talk about nerd things that are not related to Apple, because we do that too. Hello. I am Micah Sargent, and I am in today for Leo Laporte, who is happily on vacation. A little brief stint away, and very happy that he's been able to do that. So in the meantime, you'll be dealing with me. I'm the new sheriff in town. And there's actually, some excitement because not only am I changing things up, but we're changing things up today with Alex Lindsay out by having Lisa Schmeiser here to join us, senior editor at IT Pro Today, the incredible Lisa Schmeiser. Hello, Lisa. How are you?
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you.
Goody good. And we are also joined all the way up in the cold lands of Canada by our ever positive, ever awesome Renee Ritchie. Hello, Renee.
Micah, the wall has fallen. The army of others is making their way south, but it's not 2020 anymore, so things are still looking up.
Winter might be coming, but at least it's not 2020. Actually, winter's far away now. That's nice for some people. I tend to like winter, but and of course you can find him youtube.com/Renee Ritchie. Last but never least,
I love that the Californian loves winter.
I'm from Missouri, and we get beautiful winters there. Sometimes a little too much winter there. So I'm in a place now where I'm just kind of missing it, but maybe not the deepest, coldest parts. We are also joined by the person who crafts the most incredible metaphors, the most incredible extended conceits. It is WGBH's Andy Anatko. Hello, Andy.
I've always had a certain skill when it comes to being conceited. I'm glad to see that acknowledged, because as conceited as I am, to brag about how conceited I am, that would be a little bit over the top. Then I'd become intolerable and insufferable, as opposed to that being just simply a beloved quirk of my personality. Micah, nice to have you in the driver's seat. Good luck.
Oh boy, here we go. No, thank you very much, Andy. Let's kick things off with a change that has come, or is coming rather, to iOS. Folks who have checked out the beta have found out about this, and including, I think there was an article over on TechCrunch about this specifically. For anyone who downloaded the beta, they may have noticed that there are some new voices that have come to Siri. And along with 2 new voices being added, Apple has removed the default voice of Siri as a default, I should say. The voice is still there, but no longer is it the default. When you go through the setup process, as we understand now, Apple will have you choose one of 4 voices. And so you'll play them and you get to select the one that you want. Renee, can you tell us a little bit more about these voices? And if I'm curious if you've had a chance to give them a listen and what your thoughts are so far.
Yeah, I made a YouTube short where I had them all rapping in a rap battle to see which one we preferred the most. It's interesting. They're only in the U.S. right now. So if you live outside the U.S., you have to pick the U.S. voice to see the options. They're no longer listed as male and female. They're listed as voice 1, 2, 3, and 4, with 1 being the original voice. I should also preface by saying that Siri, the female, quote unquote, female voice for Siri was the default in the US and some other places, and the male voice, the quote unquote male voice in the UK and other places. That original default male voice is now voice 1. The original default female voice is now voice 4. And you have 2 new voices that have very different just tones to them. So you can choose now 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're not identified by gender, by location, by accent, anything like that. You can still choose Irish or South African or other British voices if you want to. Those remain exactly the same, but it looks like it's a step. Apple wants to make a step towards not making artificial, virtual, computational voices artificially gendered or locked to one culture or intonation or sound. So they don't both sound like American TV shows anymore, is what I've been trying to say.
Yeah, the way I've described it is they don't all sound like either Chad or Karen.
Yes.
You can take that for Karen. You can take that for as you will. But I like this. I like this change. And Lisa, I'm curious. You have continually been a person who I love to hear talk about Amazon's strategy and your thoughts on ALEXA, which choose whatever name you want. You can say the Echo, you can say, as I do, ALEXA, you can say Lady A, whatever you want to do, but anything that doesn't involve actually saying the word. I'm curious, do you think ALEXA could use some different voices? Do you like the idea of having more than one choice for your virtual assistant?
So I'm going to actually interject a tiny rant before I answer the question. And my tiny rant is I feel like a lot of these companies have been telling on themselves when they rolled out products like Cortana or Lady A or Siri, and the default for the launch was a female voice. Because what that does is that explicitly pairs the idea that assistance and assistive work is inherently gendered and coded as female labor.
Yes.
And I feel like, again, big tell on the mindset and the cultures inside these companies. And it's something that I hope the teams have been reckoning with for the last 4 or 5 years. And when I found out about the latest Siri news, and we do have a copy of the beta in the house. My husband's been testing it for Tom's Guide. I was really glad to see that the voices were no longer coded as, like you said, the Chads and the Karens. And I was even gladder that Apple is taking a step to try to break the association between assistive and explicitly coded female tech. I would like to actually see other tech companies follow this lead. And I'd even question, I'd like to see tech companies try to actually move beyond human simulacra. This, when you have something like a Cortana or a Siri or a ALEXA, we all have to spell it out, obviously. You're not dealing with a person. So coding it as a person and imposing a gender role on it doesn't have to be a requirement for the technology to function or for people to use it. And I'd question why the people who designed it and rolled it out thought it was necessary when they had the opportunity to put forth an exciting new paradigm for how people conceive of these assistants and interact with them.
Well put. Andy, it sounded like you were going to jump in there. Maybe maybe it was just a chuckle, but I am curious from your perspective, because I know that Google has offered different voices, and I think, is it color coded? Is that how they do the voices over on?
Yeah. And I wasn't going to interject. I just agreeing like hell. Lisa just absolutely nailed it there. That there's when we talk about the discussion of engineers and software developers, the concept of ethical computing, we naturally go to, oh well, should we or should we not build robots that kill humans? The low hanging fruit, the things that are kind of obvious. But in the last 5 or 10 years, what we've come to appreciate, that ethical computing also comes down to what biases are we programming into these tools that mostly white dudes in San Francisco Bay Area, what prejudices are they putting into their tools? And the sexism of a voice assistant being, of course, it's a woman, because you're gonna here's a piece of software that's going to do whatever you want it to do, and it's right there at your beck and call. It's really a Mad Men sort of paradigm. I mean, even Microsoft going to I think we can safely say Cortana, because that was never really a thing as much as Microsoft wanted to be a thing. I mean, I realized that the character came from the Halo game, but even there, it's like, okay, so you have this sort of sexy AI robot, and now you can have a sexy AI robot inside your own computer. How about that, fellas? So that's why I was kind of surprised that that's not something that Apple would have addressed almost early on. They bought Shlomo, as we call it, to avoid triggering devices. They bought Shlomo as an iPhone app, and I guess the name just sort of stuck, plus the trademark clearances. But one of the things that wasn't obvious to me immediately when the Google Assistant came aboard is that, no, there was never a name for the Google Assistant. It was always Google Assistant. I think almost from the get-go, there were male and female voices. And when they broadened that palette, they decided to say, well, we're not going to give these voices names. We're just going to simply give them colors, because we don't want to impose we don't want to impose a mindset that might have applications to like whatever that name and that culture means. But that was all my part of saying Lisa just absolutely that was the number one thing that I thought, and I think it's the most important thing about this change. I will say though that one of the things that's kind of missing from the whole voice assistant is the knowledge that it is. I think that voice assistants are more exciting, more important than augmented reality or virtual reality, because this is kind of the ideal that we're kind of moving forward to. That here's a device that we've gone from a computer that we can carry around in our pockets to a computer that we can have on our wrists, and now a computer that we don't actually need to look at or touch or interact with whatsoever. We can just simply ask it to do something, and it will do that for us. We're one step away from these assistants doing things proactively for us and telling us that, oh, by the way, you asked me a week ago to try to make a COVID vaccine appointment for you. I found one for you this morning. You have it at 10:40 a.m. At the football stadium. And so as these things become more knowledgeable about what we do, and as we rely upon them more, I think it's going to be more and more important for us to choose what kind of voice we're interacting with, so that this is our Google Assistant, our Shlomo, as opposed to the generic voice that if you hear it in your house, you know that it's talking to you and not to somebody else. And the next step after that, this is something that I only started thinking about a month or two ago, is that we are now at a friend of mine lost his voice because of cancer surgery, and fortunately he was a broadcaster, so there was hundreds and hundreds of hours of audio of him speaking, and so a company, I think in Scotland, was able to build a voice model based on all those recordings, so that when he gave public speeches, he was using his MacBook to speak for him, but it could speak in his voice. Imagine now that stuff can really be synthesized almost from whole cloth. So imagine what can happen when you get to sort of choose what kind of a voice is tailored to you. Like if it listens to me speak long enough, not that I would want to hear myself speaking back to me through a speaker, but it could see, well, here is the family voice of Andy Ihnatko. So that reflects the region that he grew up in and the people he was surrounded with. We can build a voice that is perfectly new, but based on the voice mannerisms of someone who grew up in New England, or even, I will wind this up. I'm sorry, but this is a topic that kind of got me excited. Even what if, and this is going to be really, really creepy, but if technology is usually the intersection between really cool and really creepy. What if like you lost your brother, you lost your father, you lost your mother suddenly? Would you be okay with the idea of during the year while you're still in the mourning process, if it built a voice model so that maybe it wasn't exactly like your mother's voice, but it sounded like your mother's voice. Or if you have a voice assistant that your kids are using, your little kids are using, what if it could be sort of modeled on a member of the family? All these sort of things are interesting. And these are questions that we don't really have to get into when it comes to something like augmented reality or virtual reality, because they're really, really incredibly cool gadgets, but they don't really work on our minds on such an emotional level as something that we speak to and the voice speaks back to us in response.
I wish
Andy,
we had more.
There was a really great article that Wired dropped this morning by Lauren Good called "I Called Off My Wedding: The Internet Will Never Forget." And well, what she talks about, because so much of her former relationship was commemorated through, say, social media or reminders on her calendar, and then her wedding planning was as well. And since so many of these apps have like time hop or other ways to be sticky, the process of remembering and reframing your past has been disrupted by technology. This is like the nugget of the story, is the idea that we're now living through a tremendous disruption in how we do handle things like grieving and remembering, because we no longer have the psychological defense mechanisms that people use to handle trauma or to build relationships or to move from one phase of their life into another are perpetually reset and interrupted by technological artifacts that keep coming back in there. And Andy, when you talk about, say, grieving people who are able to who would have access to like a vocal simulacra or something like that, you're effectively talking about changing the way people move through like huge transitions or huge rituals in their lives, because they'd be able to say, hack their dead dad, as it were, and have their dad say, "I'm proud of you," which is something that they didn't hear in real life. Yeah. Or it's a way to disrupt a dysfunctional relationship, or the dark side and the flip side is it's a way to replicate an abusive relationship through a new channel. To enable it. Yeah. So
it's going to be something that we really discuss as a society about how we work as humans. There was, remember about a month ago, I think it was the myheritage.com page was getting a lot of play because they'd licensed video face replacement technology. So you could take an old photo of someone from the 1930s, 40s, a family member, and it would animate it as just a simple like loop of the person smiling and the head turning a little bit and them blinking. And I had a lot of fun with it, mostly giving it like old 1930s and 40s, like a movie star, like just press photos. And seeing Myrna Loy, this beautiful, beautiful studio photo animated, was wonderful and terrific and almost a little bit emotional, but no way, no how have I ever, nor would I ever give it a picture of my mom or my dad or somebody I know that I and love, particularly someone that I'm not going to see again ever, because I don't want my memories of that person to be influenced, tinged by seeing a simulation of what that person kind of looked like. And that kind of might be the same sort of freaky thing with having a simulation of your mother's or your father's voice, particularly if, as you say, you have them saying, "Son, I'm very, very proud of you, and I'm sorry that I was so harsh to you," and that it's like... It's hard. I think this is something that psychologists are going to look into as, can this be a positive thing in therapy? Can this be a positive thing in trying to figure things out about yourself and your relationship with certain people? Again, what gets me going about certain technologies is when it provokes questions like this. Not, hey, wow, it means that when I'm walking down the street, I can just follow an animated fox that will be walking on the sidewalk ahead of me and leading me to where the frozen yogurt stand is. I mean, that's cool, but that's not the sort of thing that really, really makes you want to like, oh, gee, I thought I was going to get work done for the next hour, but it looks like I'm just going to be like pulling that lever that lets me lean the chair all the way back and just staring at the ceiling and thinking for the next 45 minutes.
Right. Renee,
I'm on record saying I hope Andy hasn't just spoiled the Black Widow movie for all of us.
I'm curious, do we have any by we, I mean you and your sort of historical knowledge, has Apple ever shown the process by which it creates these voices, how things go from the person who was the most recent Siri voice, or excuse me, the ones before these two new ones, to take that and make it into all of these little bits and pieces that come out to create a whole voice? I've just always been curious about that in general, how much of it is just done by a computer, how much of it is an actual human voice that they've taken sounds from to, mold together to make things. Has there ever been any sort of inside look, like those anechoic chambers and things that they show off from time to time?
Yeah,
it's interesting because... Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
My answer is quick. Google has published a bunch of white papers every time they upgrade their voice model about how they actually do it. And it does involve hundreds and thousands of hours of recording real voices, mostly to train AI models, because the basic technology has moved well past the idea of we're going to take subsamples and knit them together. Now it's like, here is to train a voice model, and here's how to modulate a piece of sound to sound like a human voice. Here's a 3D model of throat, lips, tongue, teeth, everything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Apple, what interests me so much about Apple is just how differently they treat everything. Like, as an example, we have macOS versions that get names like Yosemite and Big Sur, but iOS is just iOS 15. And there's like a whole history of that. Like, the Mac famously had, or still has, the Alex voice, which was the accessibility voice. But when it came time to give Siri a voice, there was male and female, I guess, because Siri was the overarching character, and then you could just choose which instantiation you want. And now it's gone to 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think exactly to Andy's point, Siri, the original female Siri voice, was a famous voice used for a lot of things. Like, you could find it on answering services and a wide range of other products. And it had all of the elements in place for Apple to be able to bring together Siri, which was already running late. It already delayed the iPhone 4S by months. By the time it finally came out in October, they just needed that done. So it was easier for them to take an existing voice model. But over the years, I forget if it was 2 years ago, they announced a new system where, very similar to Google, they now no longer want to produce they no longer want to just take recordings of a voice and stitch them together, but they process the voice and try to have it much more flexible for intonations and for where it puts the stress in different syllables depending on how it puts words and phrases together. So I forget the exact term they use, but it's a much more machine-learned, virtualized, generated at the moment process than it ever was before.
Scooter X in the chat shared a link to a white paper from Apple's machine learning research team. And it says, deep learning for Siri's voice, on-device deep mixture density networks for hybrid unit selection synthesis, which are all a bunch of words that basically mean what Renee was talking about there.
Are those convoluted adversarial networks, Michael, or the other kind?
I don't know, but put it on the blockchain. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. But this also points to... This also, what we're talking about right now, points once again back to what Lisa was saying earlier, that there are biases that we don't really think about. Some of us don't really think about, and part of it is that if you don't feel as though your dialect of not only your accent, your regional flavor of how you speak this language, but also dialect, words that are common in your usage. And I'm not. I will say the way that my aunt used to always call soda tonic. Would you like a tonic, Andy? I've got some ginger ale. You like some tonic? That's one of the things I love her about. But when you have these, when you ignore all these regionalisms, you're basically saying, here is the one voice that we are defining as normal. Here is the one way of using words that we are defining as normal. And it's kind of a way of sort of negating the way that individual communities tend to speak. And that's another thing that I think that they're going to have to start really paying attention to.
People who speak in a hybrid of languages, because you've got folks who slip between Spanish and English all the time, or folks who slip between, Cantonese or in English. People who go back and forth. I live in a tremendously polyglot community, and when I listen to my neighbors talking with each other, it is a lot of seamless moving back and forth. And I am super curious to see how that reality, which is only going to continue to trend higher, I'm super curious to see how that's going to be addressed.
And there's also code switching. Folks switching back and forth between African American vernacular English and a sort of standardized educational English. And I can think of
English and French in the same
exactly.
paragraphs.
There's so many different. Wow, I hadn't considered how that could be helped, because yes, you do then look at this virtual assistant and say there's sort of a blessing that this is the proper way, or this is the ideal way to speak this given language, and it sort of reinforces the ongoing conversation that is the way that you speak the language, and that the way that other people might speak is less than that. Wow, there's a lot there. We do need to move on to a new topic, but that's a lot to ponder there.
Well, it has forced a generation to enunciate, because it's hard enough for Siri to understand us as it is. So now we're all speaking very carefully and properly just to get our words heard.
Yes. And you know what? I kind of like that part of it, I've got to say. I constantly think of that remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Mr. Depp. And there's one point where he says to, I think it was Mike TV, "I can't understand you because you're mumbling." And I may or may not have said that to my siblings from time to time over and over again.
Not the worst social lesson you could learn from that character. So
exactly. There was a story added to the doc suspiciously. No, it's not suspicious. A really interesting story. And I don't know who did it, so speak up whenever I read this off. But the Seattle Times put out a piece that the headline is, "He believed Apple's App Store was safe. Then a fake app stole his life savings in Bitcoin." Who claims responsibility? It was John. John, this is a great story. So John Slanina, who is currently the technical directing MacBreak today, popped in a story from the Seattle Times. This is a really fascinating piece, because we have seen some news pieces, some articles that have come out kind of talking about scam apps and fake apps in the App Store. And there was a developer recently who sort of put together this long list of tweets that was talking about his own story with his own app, but then kind of went on to show some different scams that existed in the App Store, including ones that would charge you every single week for an app that pretended to be the Shortcuts app, but was a way to tie in with
$9 a week.
$9 a week. Yeah, $9 a week. And when you try to say no,
because it's just enough to not really hurt, but it adds up. Oh, wow.
Yes. And so this story,
especially if they call it Netflix.
Oh my golly. This story is a little bit.
Oh, that hurt, Andy.
This is a little bit different. This is a story about a guy who he had this hardware tool, okay? And the hardware tool was a place where he could store his cryptocurrency. So think of it as like a physical wallet for his digital coins. And he needed to gain access to it, and the device came with an app that you could then use to gain access to it. So he typed in the name of the device, and the App Store showed the app, and it had almost 5 stars. He downloaded it. He put in his credentials, and in less than a second, the Seattle Times reports 17.1 Bitcoin worth $600,000 at the time was gone, because the app was a fake. And it was designed to trick people into thinking it was a legitimate app. The person who had this happen said, of course I'm angry at the thieves, but I also have anger toward Apple, because I'm led to believe that, the App Store is this place that's supposed to be safe and vetted, and that apps are reviewed before they're allowed into the store. And so I, typed it in. I didn't think I needed to do as much due diligence with an app that's in the App Store because of the kind of story around Apple's own App Store.
A trusted environment.
Yes, a trusted environment. So Renee, I want to start with you because you are of course produce MacBreak Weekly, and when we talked about scam apps in the past on the show, when you had some really good points about it. I'm curious, here there have been times where you get a banking app or something like that, and I always go to the bank's website and try to find the link on the website to get the banking app. But I don't think that everybody is thinking they need to do that much due diligence, right? I mean,
nope.
There's a conversation around the App Store.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, my point has always been, if you want to infantilize your customers, you then take on the responsibility of driving your customers to the daycare center every day. And that applies for everything. If you don't let me repair my own stuff, you've got to make repair instantly, cheaply, and abundantly available to everyone. If you're going to have a sole app store and your argument is that it is more secure, it is more trusted, it is more safe, then you've got to make sure it is more trusted, more secure, and more safe for everybody. And one of the longest standing issues with the App Store has been, I think what Gruber affectionately calls the bunco apps and the lack of a bunco squad. And every once in a while, Apple sends in the sheriff and they round everybody up. But just week after week, you look at Twitter and there is someone ripping off the Shortcuts app, which other developers get rejected for using an icon even like remotely similar to. And there it is on a fake app. And they copy games and they have these ridiculous subscription things that try to trick you into pressing the button and then charge you 10 or 20 or whatever dollars a month. And now there are absolutely best practices. Personal responsibility is still a thing. I go to the website, I scan the QR code, I look at what's coming from the manufacturer and I make sure I get that. And I do that for email, I do that for web links, I do that for everything because I'm paranoid. And I would expect everyone to be paranoid if it was an open market. Like if you're going into a flea market, you're on guard. You're much more worried about being scammed, being pickpocketed, all of these things. But if you go into what is purported to be the highest end, most immaculate, curated, Beverly Hills snooty store in the world, you have an entirely different set of expectations. And then it becomes entirely incumbent upon Apple to live up to them. So I just get infuriated when I hear this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how I feel about it. And I think that sometimes that is the point, that it's a certain lack of empathy that takes place in folks who are super steeped in technology like us. When I do hear someone, see this story and kind of go, oh, well, obviously they should have done it. And it is much easier for us to have that knowledge and to be aware of the fact that there are these different apps in the App Store that, that bad actors can still play in this space. But for many a person, you do think that, they typed in the name of the app and it was the result that showed that, this was the app. And it also, I think that there's a conversation to be had around the App Store advertisements and how sometimes when I type something in there, a whole different kind of app will pop up and it may or may not be a sort of scammy or reoccurring charge kind of thing. And I want to add another bit to this, which is a story it was on 9to5Mac talking about how the App Store is rejecting apps that are using third-party SDKs that collect user data without consent. On its face, a very good thing. It basically is part of Apple's push towards more privacy and security and continuing to not let apps track you without your permission. But I'm curious what folks here think about if there's a certain focus that the App Store folks tend to take, and they're going down this route now, and they're doing things as far as to when they're getting new apps and reviewing them. Now they're paying attention to third-party SDKs to reject apps that are now that tracking is their main focus. But for as long as the App Store has existed, there have been these spam apps. And so I think from the outside, we definitely are going, how is this still possible? How are you, I thought you reviewed every app. Do we know the true process that Apple uses to review apps? Is every app reviewed by a human being? Is that the case anymore? It's like
but they get like 10 or 20 minutes.
Is it all backed by a brick?
It goes through instruments first, which is the auto detecting thing that looks for things like malware or other concerns or flags blatant copyright. Like if you try to upload a Calvin and Hobbes app, it flags like everything super blatant. And then they have a cadre of reviewers, but those reviewers have an enormous amount of apps and updates to go through. And so I forget what it was. There was an article reporting on it a couple of years ago. They get like 20 minutes with an app. And for me, I would say like how does some of the stuff get through? It's impossible to get this through, and I would say that about Google's YouTube screeners and Twitter's harassment screeners. There is just no amount. There's never seems to be a sufficient amount of money put on the things that cause like incredible emotional or financial harm. For things like hacks and scams and security, those are a very small percentage of cases, but they get an enormous amount of attention because they can destroy platforms. But this kind of stuff is just as harmful, and it seems like it never gets as much resources, attention, or accountability put towards it.
Lisa, I heard a good sigh from you.
Well, attention is the resource. And what I have found particularly striking is that tech companies, Renee, you just made me think about this. Tech companies seem to promise to automate the need away for attention, but what we've actually seen is that you can't. People are capable of pulling together unrelated items to create a necessary context in a way that you still have to teach a machine how to do in a really labor-intensive and time-intensive process. And as you asked the question, does anyone know how these apps get approved? And then Renee mentions they get 20 minutes max. And I thought, how do you effectively assess an app and look for everything that would send up warning signs when people are endlessly creative and they have time to work around the restrictions? There's just no way to do it. If this is a problem of human nature, which it is, see also people's willingness to be endlessly inventive in how they scam, then you do have to devote more human resources to it, and that's not happening. We don't see it happening in content moderation. We don't see it happening in app store screening. We don't see it happening in people able to use the resources of time and attention to go through and say, okay, not every user is me. Some users are going to look at Apple and think, I'm paying for a premium platform and a premium experience, therefore my risk is lower. Like, testers get to the point where they're very smart about what they're testing, and that puts them a little bit out of touch with why they're testing to begin with, because you're not testing for users like you. You're testing for users who are very different from you. And that's a process that needs to be continually refreshed and reevaluated, which again takes time and attention, which again, historically, tech companies have been really resistant to.
Andy, does that make people hesitant to use apps with in-app purchases? They download apps and then they feel like they need to continually be skeptical of them?
Yeah, I think that's going to be part of the general the general good advice for everybody who's shopping on the App Store. And I don't think that Apple is helping anybody by insisting, particularly during all these lawsuits and all the antitrust actions that they're facing worldwide, that, oh, well, the thing is we deliver things through the App Store that go far beyond payment processing. We not only validate and certify, we make sure that everything that we do to make sure that nobody has a bad experience with an iPhone app. And they use this to explain, here's why we lock everybody into one single store. To developers, here's why we are forcing you to commit to these APIs and to follow these rules and these guidelines. And then when Apple steps on a rake and it's the customer who gets hit in the face with the handle, that becomes, you start to, all eyes turn back to the Apple spokesperson, and it's like, and it's especially in a situation like this, because it gets a little bit worse than that. It turns out that the Bitcoin wallet that he was using was a hardware wallet called Trezor, and it doesn't even have a mobile app. They're working on one, but they don't even have one. And and worse than that, they have been aware of, both on the Google Play Store and on the Apple App Store, that this is a common enough scam that they have told Apple, hey, look, watch out for this. There's another app out there that's doing this. So this was at some point a warning about this problem entered into the climate and atmosphere and bubble of the Apple App Store, but at no point did they add anything to the review process to say that, oh, by the way, here's a bunch of things that of exceptions to take a look for, whether it's via software or by human beings. So this is the sort of stuff where the more Apple tries to push the button, push the narrative that, oh yes, well, this, not everybody loves their customers as much as we do. We take much better care of our customers than anybody else does, and of course, there's going to be some people who are upset with that. But again, when things like this happen, Apple should do more than simply issue a statement saying, oh, well, gosh, that shouldn't have happened. It really, the App Store continues to be the one big bag of hurt in the Apple experience. Every time, for developers, for users, every time there's something, just a really awful experience, and it looks like, gosh, there seems to be that a company that's worth $1 trillion should be able to figure out how to ameliorate this somewhat. Apple just doesn't have an answer for it, and that's very disappointing.
If I could add something to one of the points Lisa made, though, that I thought was so apt. There's another controversy going on. I don't want to conflate the two because they have very different consequences. But YouTube is experimenting with no longer showing likes on videos. Yeah. And one of the reasons they're doing this is because a lot of creators have complained that it's bad for their mental health or that they've been brigaded. And there were a bunch of really popular, really straight white male creators who came out immediately against this, saying, I'll never be able to see a bad video again. How will I know what video to judge? And then you had a bunch of people who were women or black or LGBTQ or just any marginalized group going, oh my God, I'll be able to sleep again. And it just like the human consequences to these decisions of these giant companies vary incredibly based upon the amount of privilege you have going into this. Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of like, if you know enough to check the app or you don't know enough to check the app, if you know enough like to check for the subscriptions things or you don't, all of these are predicated on very different levels of sophistication and just born privilege. And it's I think that just makes it super important to analyze them not from the least likely threat level, but the most likely threat level. And with what you said, Mike, a lot of empathy and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there is something about the hygiene point of view. I'm sorry to cut in, but Google just released from one of their experimental divisions a really interesting app that is for document scanning with your phone and understanding context and storing that stuff securely. And both as an Android user and as a nerd, as a geek with lots of papers that he does not want to have to deal with, I was really excited to try it out. But God, I must have like. It was almost like it was almost like diffusing a bomb downloading this app, because here's an app that's defined as no, take all your bank statements, all your receipts, all your most personal and private records, and take pictures of it with your phone. And like this, oh God, there are now 800 different well-funded groups that are trying to make fake versions of this to make sure that I accidentally download the wrong one. And I didn't trust anything until I found a link to it from a Google page to download it, because this is going to be something that we just have to be aware of, because I don't think there's ever going to be a big solution to it.
There's going to be a real market for tech concierges, if there isn't already, where you basically hire somebody to optimize your tech ecosphere, and they do risk management for you, and they protect you from your own idiocy. It's actually kind of a natural market for Apple and the Genius Bar and the Apple stores when you think about it. Like, imagine if you were to go in and you're buying somebody an iPhone and they aren't somebody who swims in the currents of tech media. They just want a device that works, and they want apps that work. And they're like, I want an app that can take photos of permission slips so that my kid can go to camp. And they go and they buy this, and imagine they just pay like a little add-on fee, and then somebody at the Genius Bar walks through a quick series of questions to try to figure out what their tech savvy is and what their lifestyle demands are, and then says, okay, I'm installing these apps. Here are your settings. We will periodically ping you through this little maintenance widget we've installed to make sure everything's okay. We'll auto renew it at $90 a year, and you come in once every 6 months, and we'll do a manual backup and a little hygiene. And it would be like an amazing service. that people would cleave to, because it takes the burden of time and attention and energy off of them and makes the security risk someone else's problem.
We've just launched a new company here on MacBreak Weekly.
You remember when Facebook in Australia had the brilliant idea of saying
the three of
that
us, this will be our last show because we have to divest ourselves. Of, thank you. It's been a great 15 years.
I'm sorry. Did I just break the podcast? I'm sorry.
It reminds me of when Facebook in Australia. Sorry. It reminds me of when Facebook in Australia had the brilliant idea of saying, just upload all your nudes to us and we'll protect you against revenge porn. And every InfoSec person on the planet immediately said, this is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. I want to believe that companies, especially Apple, can be beneficial, but I always think the back of my mind, once my information exists on your thing and my thing, I now have to protect both. I'm always going to have that little hurdle.
Yeah, that's fair. We do need to take a quick break here before we come back with more news. Of course, we are joined this week by Andy Ihnatko, Renee Ritchie, and Lisa Schmeiser. Thank you all for being here. And now I'm going to tell you about Amazon Pharmacy, who are bringing you this week's episode of MacBreak Weekly. At a time when staying at home is honestly the best thing for everyone, we're slowly but surely making it out of this. We're getting there. Why not make it easier on yourself, though, while you are at home? Amazon Pharmacy saves you time, easily works with your doctor, and delivers medication right to your door. You can get the meds you need without leaving the house. That means one less errand and, of course, more safety for you, which is so much better than waiting in a line at a pharmacy with everybody else as you're all trying to stand 6 feet away from each other. Here is why Amazon Pharmacy is pretty awesome. It saves you time because the medication is delivered directly to your door, so there's no more waiting in line at the pharmacy. It's super easy. You just have your doctor's office send your prescription straight to Amazon Pharmacy. Then they'll coordinate with your doctor to ensure that everything is accurate and you're getting what you need. And you can use your insurance. Amazon Pharmacy works with most insurance plans nationwide. Plus, Prime members get free 2-day delivery, and they save on prescription medication when paying without insurance. The pricing is clear and understandable. I know I've had that issue in the past with other pharmacies where you are going to get your medicine and then the thing doesn't tell you how much it's going to cost, or regularly mine will just say $0.00. This is an estimate. And it's like, okay, but I know it's not going to cost me no money. So what is it going to cost? Most pharmacies can't figure out the price before they actually fill your prescription, but Amazon Pharmacy shows you your insurance copay and the price without insurance so you can make the right decision. And your medical information is protected. The information you provide to Amazon Pharmacy, it's never shared outside of the pharmacy itself. You can always speak with a pharmacist too, which is something you can't find everywhere. They have pharmacists on staff 24/7. So if you forgot to take your medicine earlier in the day, you go to take it at, 2 a.m. And then you're like, should I do that? Well, don't worry. 24/7, they've got pharmacists on staff so you can have your questions answered when you need advice. Amazon Pharmacy also owns PillPack, which is a subscription service that I had used for a long time, even before they were acquired by Amazon. And it's pretty awesome because this is a way, if you're a person who takes vitamins like me, to get all of your vitamins in a given, I think it's like a month period. And they come in these little packets and they have day and night options. And so you can have it split up. So, on this given day, it's printed on the packet. It says 8 a.m. or whatever time you put in. And then it has listed out the different vitamins that are inside that you can take. And then your night vitamins, if you take that. I've used it for allergy medicine as well. Super handy because then you never forget. They're just these little packets that are perfect. And, if you go away for a weekend, all I did was pull out the roll and rip Friday to Sunday. And then I had those with me and I wouldn't forget. And I just think it's a great option. So Amazon Pharmacy and PillPack, both are really cool options. Amazon Prime members can save on prescription medication when not using insurance and get free 2-day delivery. Learn more at amazon.com/MacBreak. That's amazon.com/MacBreak. Thank you so much to Amazon Pharmacy for sponsoring this week's episode of MacBreak Weekly. You just head to amazon.com/MacBreak to learn more. All right. I want to talk about a really exciting story that hit the waves earlier. And that is Apple Arcade. This was Apple's, I keep calling it a streaming service. It's not a streaming service. It is a subscription service for games. And when Apple announced this, Renee, when was Apple Arcade announced?
The original Apple Arcade?
Yes, original.
Was 29, WWDC 2019. No, it was the March event 2019.
March event 2019. God, I love this historian. Yeah. So Apple Arcade was launched in 2019 in March, and $4.99 a month. You got a long trial of it. And Leo and I were excited. We talked a lot about it on iOS Today whenever it first came out and so on. And it kind of faded into the background a little bit as time went on. The cool thing about Apple Arcade was that it was going to be an ad-free experience. There weren't going to be in-app purchases. And so it wasn't those pay-to-play style games that you got elsewhere, but you still got to have a great gaming experience. And over time, games were sometimes added and people continued to use it. I continued to be a subscriber because there were a couple of puzzle games on there that I liked, but not so much. And then all of a sudden, Apple popped out this newsroom piece. This was April 2nd, where they said, hey, by the way, we are expanding Apple Arcade in a huge way. They've added more than 30 games, and many of them are games that you may already be familiar with. There's NBA 2K21 Arcade Edition, Star Trek Legends, the Oregon Trail. I've downloaded several of these and started to play with them. But yeah, Renee, the one thing about this that I found exciting and encouraging was the inclusion of games like the NBA 2K21 game and this beautiful Fantasian game. That it's not just Apple Arcade games leading up to this, on the whole, had a similar look and feel to them. And this has really kind of broadened the horizons. And I think it's encouraging more people might be interested in it.
Yeah, I always liked Apple Arcade because for me, it was one of the examples of Apple putting their money into something that, wasn't necessarily a profit center, but they really used it to infuse capital into indie developers who just wanted to make a game, but didn't think it could succeed on the App Store. And Apple's like, we'll produce this game. We'll give you the money. Just make a great game. With some caveats, you had to make it on every platform. You couldn't just be for iPhone. It had to be iPhone, iPad, Mac, and Apple TV. So you did have to, it was a bigger investment than maybe a lot of developers wanted to take on initially. But you got all of that support from Apple to do it. And there were a lot of really beautiful games that I'm 100% sure we would never have seen without, Phil Schiller backing the Brinks truck up to the developers on them. But, but over time, you're right. Like it sort of sustained. It didn't really do much. I still think Apple is lost in the woods when it comes to streaming services. I think their eyes are on the past, and it would behoove them to not only get into streaming the way they have with video streaming, but to open the gates to Xbox Game Pass and Stadia and all these other streaming services. I think that's absolutely the future of video games. But what I like about this announcement is twofold. One is it's getting not more serious games, but it's getting more popular games onto the Apple Arcade platform, which is great. But also it's brought back a bunch of really the classic games that a lot of us remember from the early days, like Frenic originally from the Icon Factory, and Cut the Rope, and just a bunch of the really the genre defining, if you want to call the iPhone its own genre of mobile video games. And yeah, there's Cut the Rope, and they're just some of them are so adorable, and it brings back a lot of fun memories. I don't know how much it'll move the needle, but I think if Apple wants to get into higher next generation Apple TV gaming, and certainly if they want to get into VR gaming, this has to be like the very, very beginning. This isn't an end game move by any chance. This is like, hey, we're still around sort of a move.
Lisa, I know you mentioned that there's beta running in the house, so I'm curious. I know this isn't part of the beta, but it just makes me curious. Are there gamers in the house? Have you tried out Apple Arcade? Have you had any experience with it at all?
I have to be honest, there are a few topics in tech where the minute people start talking about them, my brain substitutes that blah, 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 ginger.
And gaming is one of them.
Old Far Side reference for younger listeners there. No, it's one of these things where if there is gaming going on, like my brain has put up like a shield. And I don't, to Lucille Bluefoot, I don't understand the question.
Well, Andy Anatko, what are your thoughts about this Apple Arcade? I mean, the expansion especially. Does this bode well for Apple Arcade's future? Does it seem like Apple is continuing to invest in the arcade subscription?
Yeah, anytime a company's putting more money into something without any signs of killing it, that's always a good thing. And I have always had and continue to have a problem seeing Apple Arcade as a product like Apple Music, where Apple wants to make this a destination that Apple wants to have. We are so proud of what we're doing with Apple Arcade. That this is attracting people in a market that we've never really attracted before. I do think that they curate and cultivate Apple Arcade as a way of sort of patching a really gaping hole that they have in their portfolio of features of strengths. And the idea of making sure that they have a really, really strong Apple Arcade means that if they make another push to try to make Apple TV relevant again, they can try to say, hey, look at this wonderful portfolio of games we have. If they want to continue to make subscriptions work really, really well, they can say they've yet to come up with something that says that, wow, Apple News is such an incredibly great thing that you would pay $80 for it, or Apple Arcade is such a great thing you would pay $100 for it. But all these little things as part of a group of services makes the larger subscription work well. And I think as Renee alluded to, or I'm sorry, it might have been you, but you think about all the sort of things that an AR headset is going to be, or AR and VR headset is going to be attractive for. Right now, really, there are only two things that run on VR headsets. One is essentially training workers to have a manual for aircraft parts replacement in front of them while they work on the aircraft training, and the other is gaming. So when they have that piece of hardware coming out, and now I'm starting to think it's sooner rather than later, they won't have all of the pieces of the sales brochure on day one, but at least they'll say, and hey, look at this beautiful library of apps that you can run on this beautiful platform.
Okay. Yeah. I think that is a future that I'm certainly looking forward to with more of those hardware options. I've noticed too, a lot of these games, because I ended up down. I also, Lisa, for the most part, for me, it's Charlie Brown Teacher or Charlie Brown Adult. Yeah. Whenever gaming topics come up, that's most of the time what it is. But Oregon Trail and to an extent the Star Trek game, those cut through the womp womp. And so because of that, I downloaded a few of these games, and I noticed that a lot of them are they support the controller. So there are third-party controllers that you can buy that work for both the iPad and the Apple TV. The Apple TV actually supports the Xbox controller, the PlayStation controller, and many of these games, these new ones especially, have controller support. So yeah, it's clear that this is something that Apple is continuing to experiment with and I think put more attention toward. Let us move on to talk about Tim Cook talking to Kara Swisher for, I believe, what is the podcast called? Sway. Yes. So Sway is Kara Swisher's podcast, and had a chance to talk with Tim Cook about, I think, everything, which was a really interesting conversation. And of course, that has resulted in several articles being published about some of the things that happened in the piece, including Tim Cook saying he probably won't be at Apple in 10 years' time. I think one of the questions
don't want to hear
was,
it.
Yeah.
Stop it right now, Micah Sargent.
I'm sorry. One of the questions
Turn this
was,
car around so fast.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years kind of a thing? And we'll turn the Apple car around so fast. But yeah, what does that mean if Tim Cook's not at Apple in 10 years?
Jeff Williams is running Apple.
Is that an honest, or is that who you think would be taking place?
That's kind of like, I think if Tim Cook got hit, like, God forbid, but if Tim Cook got hit by a bus today, Jeff Williams would be CEO tomorrow.
And that is because
I'm hoping that well, I mean, like he's been groomed for it the same way Tim Cook was. When you look at the signs when Steve Jobs decided that he would rather initially be an executive chairman, and ultimately passed away, he took Tim Cook out of ops. And people talk a lot about the Steve Jobs, Johnny Ive industrial design partnership and the Steve Jobs, Scott Forstall human interface and software partnership. But Steve and Tim, they did things like that famous saying, the iPad exists because of Steve's vision, but it cost $500 because of Tim's logistical genius. And they worked really well on making those sorts of products. All of Apple's products now, the way that they're put together, that's all Tim Cook. But Steve took him out of his comfort zone and said, you have to go learn marketing. And Steve's like, and Tim's like, I don't want it. He's like, no, you have to go learn marketing, and put him in those different positions at Apple. And that's what's been happening with Jeff Williams as well. Like he now runs a design department. He's always run Apple Health. He's been in charge of Apple Watch as a complete whole entire product, which means he's had to understand how Apple works, not just from the logistics and the operational side, but every capacity at Apple. And it's very hard to find another Steve Jobs, like a visionary product genius who can get up on stage and do what he did. But if you can't have that, then having someone who can just run the logistics. I know a lot of people love the charismatic CEO as a founder, but as we've seen from famous CEO founders, just tweeting themselves into oblivion so often later, that is not ideal for shareholder value. That is not always ideal for, or Tim Epic's famous lawsuits. That's not always ideal for anybody else. But if you have someone who is just rock solid with numbers, knows exactly how to keep the company running, and can hire people who are smarter than them to argue with them, and Steve Jobs was great with that too. He didn't want iTunes on Windows, didn't want an iPad mini, there's so many things that he trusted other people to do, even when they disagreed with him, and then rapidly thought it was his opinion all along. So as long as you have people like that, I think Jeff Williams, every sign points to him, and I think he would do a similar type of job to what Tim Cook is doing, just at a slightly slower and taller pace.
Yeah. Now, Andy, one of the things that Tim Cook continues to say and has continued to say in this interview is that AR is, quote, critically important for Apple's future. You were talking a little bit about AR and some of the future paradigms, including voice-based computing. What do we think is going to come of this? Because that has been, for as long as I was covering, transcribing earnings calls back whenever Renee and I worked at iMore, to, reading them from Jason Snell now, there's a mention of AR every single time. So something's on the way, right?
Yeah, you got to feel that. It's getting the vibes are getting stronger and stronger. Tim is getting bolder and bolder about talking about it. One of my favorite lines from the entire interview was Kara Swisher saying to Tim, once you and I had lunch and the only things you talked about were football and augmented reality. That's and that wasn't an interview. That was just hanging out having lunch. So yeah, it really, all these things have sort of mounted up in my mind to think that I think that we've all been sure that Apple's definitely working on it, and they're working on it with view towards shipping a product. I always thought that 2021, even for a developer hardware like initial beta release, would be optimistic. Mm-hmm. But now I'm starting to think I would not be surprised at all if that's one of the big reveals of WWDC, because it is going to be about software. It's also going to have to be about trying to figure out how to sell this to ordinary people, which is by no means a solved problem. Like I said, you got games and you got corporate training, and that's pretty much it. And the I've always, we've talked about this at length before, so I'll try to be very, very brief, but I just have such a hard time imagining how Apple is going to produce something that's going to solve all the problems, that's going to address the problems that nobody has had any real success addressing yet. And that's including, do you want to wear this thing on your face? And so you certainly don't want to do this and go out in public, but even if you're in the privacy of your own living room, how long do you want to wear this thing on your face before the experience becomes unbearable? And then thirdly, how much can you possibly sell this unit for so that it will be in any way relevant? There are people who want such a high-end gaming experience that they will spend $1,600 just on a graphics card, let alone the rest of the PC hardware to run games at their best. So there'll always be those nuts out there, but Apple didn't make a success with the Apple Watch, with the iPad, with the iPhone, with the original Mac by selling it to nuts who are willing to spend crazy amounts of money for something that's totally unproven. They made the watch a success because it wasn't cheap, but people put it on their wrists and started having it. People immediately saw the relevance to their lives to have this active window upon their health. People got the iPhone and they immediately stopped seeing like these phones with lots of tiny screen and lots of clicky buttons as well. No, I'm not a corporate executive who needs to be in touch 24/7. But they turned into a lifestyle thing that it'll play my movies. It'll be my camera. It'll be all these other cool things for me. That's how they made it relevant. So I don't know. I'm not saying that it's an unsolvable problem. I'm just saying that it will be, if Apple solves this, it will be a delightful experience for me and a lot of people because we will have seen something that we certainly didn't see before.
What was Gurman's newsletter? It said like they might sell one a week was the current projection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of the first like developer sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too many
one per week per Apple Store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be one like if the next pandemic is transmitted by pink eye, it will be because of everybody at the Apple Store wanting to try this thing, not wanting to buy it. So the second wave of like inability of alcohol wipes is going to be.
Micah, you're in a safe place.
Again, a subscription service can solve your problem here.
Yeah,
okay, I'm okay.
Deep breaths in and out, deep cleansing. Don't yote Andy. He didn't mean it.
Yes. Okay. We're good. Let us move on to talk about some rumors. How about some rumors next? And I'm taking a break here because we've got a little interstitial. And okay. So the rumor that I want to talk about actually has to do with AR, because one of the things that in all of the rumors that have come out about augmented reality in Apple and some of the new products that Apple might announce, including an Air Tag solution that would let you find stuff that you've lost, sort of like the tile trackers or the trackers. There is a patent, and of course, again, it's a patent, and with that comes a huge heaping iceberg-sized grain of salt. And
I patented Andy.
It's Himalayan pink salt, by the way. But with it is that Apple Pay might use the ultra wideband chip to select the right card based on a location. So you can kind of think of this, if you walk into to the Subway and you go, and I don't mean the restaurant, I mean the place where you can have transportation, and it can sense, okay, you are about to bring your phone close to this terminal, and then immediately switch to the right card for the Subway, for your transit, versus as you take your phone and you bring it toward an NFC terminal to pay for your Subway sandwich, then it can use the right card there. I continually see these technologies, Apple is kind of slowly lacing these technologies into its different products and slowly releasing some features that work with them. But really, it's going to be when they all come together, how they're going to be used to
did you just say that the iPhone will be able to detect the sugar content in the fake bread that's on the 11-inch submarine?
Ew. Yeah, to let you know.
Was that your allegation?
Yeah. What is it that they used to say that and maybe it's true, there's a chemical inside that's similar to that you find in yoga mats or something like that.
Yeah.
It's called fiber.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you buy that really expensive yoga mat that Apple sells. But the point that I'm getting to here is that if my Apple Watch has an ultra wideband chip in it, and my iPhone has an ultra wideband chip in it, and my HomePod Mini has an ultra wideband chip in it, and then I put on Apple's AR glasses, not only can it use the augmented reality technology that's based on, LiDAR or other types of sensor technology, but it can also use the spatial awareness of where these different devices are in relation to me because of that ultra wideband chip. And so you can think about, say again?
The beacons, all the beacons everywhere.
Exactly. All the beacons everywhere to find out where you are spatially. And so as opposed to kind of mapping out your territory, with these ultra wideband chips as beacons, it can map you out spatially as it's also building the environment around you. And then I start to think about ways that, you already would have gestural control built in if you've got an Apple Watch, and you can sort of move your wrist around if it can detect those changes because it's down to millimeter scales. So I'm not surprised to see a patent like this early on, and to see that maybe this isn't a new thing, Renee, right? Like Apple had built in portrait mode for the iPhone, and then I can't remember which came first, if it was ARKit or portrait mode, but as those technologies kind of advanced, then suddenly they were using those depth sensors for more information to help with ARKit or vice versa.
Well, this, I think, is closer to the beacon technology. They tried unsuccessfully, the iBeacons, they tried unsuccessfully to roll out previously. And some people did genius stuff, like the folks at UL, at the conferences in UL, they put together a virtual museum for Steve Troughton-Smith and the AR, and they used all the beacons where you'd walk up to it. And Chris Harris did it, had this technology where as you got closer to the exhibit, it would download a specific app over the iBeacon infrastructure for that experience, and then it would just evaporate once you left. Like, there was extremely clever stuff, but just the iBeacons themselves never became popular enough. The technology never took off enough. And one of the many, many things that ultra wideband can do, in addition to letting you know your location, pointing at people, the spatial awareness, is it can transfer data. It can do a lot of the things. So it's almost like a superset of what Bluetooth beacons could usually do. And I can see just an incredible, people are talking about it, using it to control the AR, like the mapping the body for the AR stuff if you're wearing a watch. But it seems like there's very little limits to what you can do within short range proximity. It's almost like inside your room GPS, very, very accurate inside your room GPS.
And right now, we may not see as much of a reason for this. Alex Lindsay classically has brought up the example a few times of being at a concert or being at a sporting event and being able to find the restrooms is the example. Or Andy, you mentioned earlier having a fox pop out and walk you to a place. But for me, as a smart home enthusiast, my example is I walk into my office and I've got a HomePod Mini in here. And as long as that HomePod Mini knows that I'm in the room because of my Apple Watch, then it will leave the lights on. But when I walk out of the room, then it will turn the lights off. Because right now, the way to go about doing that would be to use something like a motion sensor or a door contact sensor. And so then when the door opens, then the lights turn on. But then you have to set something, okay, is it that after an hour, the lights turn off automatically? Is it that I have to automatically turn off the lights? Is it that,
and if you don't move, the lights turn off while you're in there? It's the worst.
Exactly. If you're using motion sensors, then whenever you're not moving enough, so you're going, hey, what's that, Lisa?
So here's the question I have. Because it seems like our whole conversation has been around different aspects of ambient computing. The idea that computing is distributed effectively everywhere in your environment, and how you interface with it is moderately task oriented, and it's assisted by digital assistants or augmented reality or your watch or what have you. And one of the big selling points is often, you can have a personalized routine that, it's pegged to your watch or it's pegged to your commute. But a lot of people live in households with multiple people who have multiple routines and varying preferences. So what I'm still really curious about is Micah, how would your scenario play out if you walk into your office and the lights come on, and let's say a playlist kicks up for you, but then your partner, who's also wearing an Apple Watch, walks into the room, how does that technology work to does it prioritize first come first serve, or are there a set of rules you have to agree on, or are you talking about a tech ecosystem where you have one user, one data cloud, one device, one set of queues, and everybody else can just learn to live with it?
Yeah. So the hack, Lisa, is that you find yourself a partner who's this close to just despising technology. And then they don't want to have anything to do with smart home or automation. That's what I've done anyway. He's like, "What are all these newfangled contraptions you've put in?" No, he doesn't despise.
Whereas I live in a house where my 10-year-old actually has Siri and Google Assistant. She'll pit them against each other by asking them both the same question to see who has a better answer.
See, yeah, that's
so it's like Smart Assistant Thunderdome in my house.
But you do bring up a good.
I feel attacked right now, just for the record.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, though, Lisa, and I do think that that's one of the things that I've noticed about this tech from early on. And I think certainly not one of the first times that this has been brought up, but it is something that continues to be an issue of this single user kind of experience. In the Home app, for example, and this is speaking specifically to HomeKit, you can invite other people to be a part of your home, but it's not really the same as kind of everybody being able to have their own routines. You really have to, it's like, okay, Tuesday, we're going to get together for the family meeting and we're going to talk about what scenes everybody wants to add to the home. And then we'll vote on the ones and the ones that get the most votes. It's like, oh, I really need that kitchen breakfast scene. Sorry, that one only got 2 votes. The dog voted you out. I don't know how we're going to solve that.
Yeah.
Renee,
This is my thing about ambient technology is it can be so great because it does provide frictionless ways to move through tasks or to pay for things, or even augmented reality will help with this too. But it doesn't address the realities of shared spaces or communal living or a lot of situations people are going to find themselves in, either in workplaces or classrooms or even public and social spaces.
Andy, you were about to say something?
No, I'm just to Lisa's point. There's always going to be a tension within a group of people about certain people's comfort levels regarding technology. That I don't want to be. I know that you love these smart speakers, but I don't want to be walking from room to room where there are active microphones. And every time this topic comes up, always with a great big smile on my face, think about the time when I used to. It was my job in the family to go and help my mom and my dad decorate their house for Christmas. And they used to have one of those little candles in every single window facing the street. And so of course every night they would have to go from room to room, window to window, unplugging and replugging things. And so one year I showed up with a box of X10 home controllers and got it all set up, and I showed it. I showed it to my mom. Say, okay, now I simplified the remote for us. So now whenever you want to turn on, just push this button right here, and you push the button. Oh my God, they're all on. And then whenever you want to turn them all off, just push this one button here. Oh my God, everything's off. That's wonderful. Oh, that's great. And so okay, that went well. And then I produced this other little plastic box. I said, actually, if you want, I could set it up so that it automatically turns on at a certain time and they all turn off at a certain time. And that was her nope point. That was her. I'm comfortable with a button that I push. I'm not comfortable with a button that a robot pushes because it'll burn the house down. So that's the sort of stuff I'm talking about. There's always going to be, when you have a household of people, there's always going to be some people. You kind of have to kowtow to the person who is most freaked out by technology, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I have gone as far. Some of my partner's family members are really uncomfortable around Echo devices and things like that. So before the pandemic had started, one of the things that I had done is unplug, if they were going to be visiting, then I would just unplug those devices and let them know, hey, they're unplugged. There's, you don't have to worry about that. And I think it is important that, we're all aware of how folks are affected by or are interested in or not interested in these technologies. And we've talked a little bit about this. I can't remember now where I talked about this, but there's kind of a conversation around what about, you have kids and they go over to other kids' houses to hang out. And should the parents provide like a disclosure? Hey, we have Google Nest devices in our house, or we have HomePods in our house, or we have security cameras in our home. There are all these different kinds of things that.
Oh my God!
Start to wonder.
And Google Nest, is that the list that you get given when the child shows up?
Yeah, right. Like, should we not be aware of those things, and should we not be kind of careful about those things? That there may be a parent who wants to protect their kid from showing up in some server somewhere as the facial recognition technology that's used for the security system does what it does.
Or they're in WITSEC.
Yeah.
At the same time, I have to say, but this is a little anecdotal here. I want to say that it's interesting how it is not a black or white kind of situation. And the example that I give is this. So partner, again, using him as kind of the person who, I can't remember what you said earlier, Lisa, exposed to the flows of technology or something like that, but, and not, gets easily frustrated by and is more like ho-hum tech. With him, security cameras and things like that are kind of freak him out. And, speaking to devices is not really a thing that he's interested in. And one time, because he was on the home Wi-Fi network, the show he was watching on the Apple TV showed up on his phone so that he could, hit play or pause. And he almost lost his mind about that. And so I had to explain, here's why that's happening. I can show you how to disable that so that, because then in his mind, it was like the phone was watching him at knowing what he was watching on TV. And I was kind of explaining, no, it's not exactly how it works, et cetera. And so we were able to talk through that. But then he was going to, there was some place where you could pull out your driver's license and show that to confirm ID, or you could look into this camera and they would do facial recognition and use that to determine your ID. And he comes back from this place and is telling me excitedly about this. And in my head, I'm going, okay, so what is the name of this company? How long do they store your information? Do they use that facial recognition data? Was it actual facial recognition where they took a 3D print, 3D model of your face, or was it? And all of these things are spinning in my head. And I'm like, how are you pumped about this, but your phone showing that you're watching a show is effective? And so everybody has different, you know what I mean? It's all different. And I think that kind of makes it difficult to try to figure out.
Can I tell you the story, Micah, about when I was going through customs and I have the Nexus card, which means that you go straight through, but you have to do an iris scan to prove your identity. Mm-hmm. Some are fingerprints. A lot of the newer ones are iris scans. And I walked up, I scanned, went up to the customs agent. And they said, well, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to an Apple event. And they go, I hate Apple. They're using Face ID to steal all of our faces. And I'm like, you just watched the iris scan on what I'm sure is an Equifax machine with an open plug at the back. And you're upset about, we have to have a long talk.
Right. It's hard, to explain that. And Face ID is one of those things where with my family, when Face ID first came out, we had that. Okay, everybody gather around the FaceTime so I can explain to you all kind of, and in here, I'm joking, right now I'm joking and laughing about it, but those are things that I do take as seriously as possible. And I never look down on a person, my partner, I'm not going to look down on him because he was worried that his phone was watching him because it was showing the shit, Understandably, if you don't understand how the technology behind it is working or what it's doing, then you do have that concern. And with the level of tracking that's out there, where people reasonably do get afraid that their app is watching them. Lisa, you mentioned the company that you want to start. The company that I want to start, or the show that I think would be fun to start, is an investigative company that's like a private eye, but what they do is specifically when someone is like, I know Instagram is watching me or is listening to me because it tried to show me ads for Disney tickets, and I never and I only talked about Disney tickets around wanting to go to Disneyland around it. I never typed anything. And then your job as the investigator is to figure out what site or what thing they did that resulted in them getting ads for that. Or if it was just, finding out with the campaign, what demographics it was targeting. I just think it'd be so fun to help people figure that out.
So sometimes people don't want that answer. I actually was asked that on the radio once, and I admit that had I taken 5 seconds to phrase this a little better, I would not have seen the shocked faces on other people in the studio. But they're saying, yeah, but I had this the common experience that either you've had or you heard of a guy or have a friend who had this experience where, my God, I was talking about Pilates with a friend of mine because she's really into Pilates and didn't do a web search on it, didn't do anything. Now suddenly my phone is getting ads for like Pilates training in my area, and that. So why are they using their microphones in my phone to track my? And I had to say, oh no. It's first of all, if you have problems trusting these companies, realize that to keep the microphone on and the CPU of your phone processing your speech 24/7, your battery would be dead in 30 minutes. So don't even worry about that. No. I'm getting to the bad part, where I'm saying it's a simple case. It's a simple case of the ad network using through apps you've already installed on your phone, being able to track your location to your friend's house, also noticing that your friend was also there at the same time, that they were both together in the same space for a certain amount of time, that she's really into Pilates and just came from a Pilates appointment, and betting and guessing that maybe you guys talked about Pilates. And like I'm hearing cricket, oh, that's right. That's way creepier than it's much more reassuring that, oh no, there's a microphone. And if I just simply turned the microphone off, I would be invisible to tracking. Like, yeah, they're
as opposed to every move you make is monetized for someone else.
They don't need to put a microchip in you or open up a microphone. It's inescapable.
Are you telling me when I finally get my vaccine, they're not going to be tracking me? I am perturbed.
No, Elon is going to chip you. They'll
have the backup,
Bill.
but
So Andy has traumatized not only Micah but his entire radio audience on this one show alone. Just keeping track.
I am a communications professional. I'm very proud of that.
All of Tuesday's work.
I want to move on. We could continue to talk about privacy here, but there's a really interesting story from the Financial Times talking about Snapchat, or Snap Inc., the company behind Snapchat, who have been looking at ways to circumvent Apple's new privacy rules. I think it was Facebook, and I think, Renee, you were the one who brought this up, that even when Apple had first introduced this new thing where you would be prompted about whether you want to allow a company to track you, that Facebook was saying, yeah, we're upset about this, but also we already have ways to kind of get around this. And that for the longest time,
there was no stop to first-party trackers. Like it was a whole big lie. It's like Apple does nothing to intermediate first-party trackers, and Google and Facebook and Snap, when you're on their properties, and TikTok, they have 100% perfect knowledge, perfect data. There's nothing you're doing on their platform that they don't know. And their platforms are not only huge, but have social network hooks on so many sites on the web that they don't really need any of this stuff. They have other reasons to be upset about these things. Not Google. Right. They're smartly staying quiet about it, letting Facebook take all the negative publicity. But yeah,
and I think that let's try to explain for folks first party versus third party trackers, which I think is as simple as to say, if you going back to that thing about walking into the room, if you were to walk into my office right now and do things in this room, my eyes are on you the whole time, and I can see everything that you're doing. While you're in my office, I know all of the things you're doing, regardless of what you choose to do. And even if you go stand in the corner and sort of turn your back to me, I can still see the things that you're doing in the space. And so first-party trackers, it's the idea that while you were using the application or the service that belongs to that first party, that company that makes that service or that app, then they're going to see everything that you're doing there. So when you are in Snapchat and you tap on stories in the story section, or when you're on TikTok and you look through certain things, or on Instagram and you tap on or linger on ads for too long, or tap on an ad or to go to comment, all of that stuff is available to that company. With Instagram owned by Facebook, that also means that all the activity that you do on Instagram is tracked there and then can be added to what you do on Facebook, and all that information can be used together.
And Oculus,
exactly. WhatsApp, all those companies. And so that is the first party tracker. But can you explain what a third party tracker is and how those have been used before?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So first party tracking is exactly what you said. If I'm on Facebook and I'm in a knitting group on Facebook, Facebook will serve me ads because, like, for knitting needles, for yarn, those sorts of things, that's a first party tracking experience. They know what my interests are because I'm doing it on their platform, and they're serving me relevant ads based on those things. But if I then leave Facebook and I go to lego.com or jeep.com and then come back to another website, or I come back to Facebook, them serving me ads based on being on jeep.com or lego.com, those are third-party ads because it required them tracking my behavior on sites they do not own, on third-party sites. The way I like to phrase it, which is horrible, but the way I like to phrase it is, you can look at tech companies sort of like restaurants. Apple is like a 3-star Michelin restaurant that 7 out of 10 times will give you a really good meal. You pay for it, you're pretty much on your way. Google, you go in, you sit down, you get a full lobster dinner, and they'll leer at you at the end, but you sort of can choose what you want to do afterwards based on your comfort level and whether you want more lobster dinners. Facebook is like the free Vegas buffet, but you have to eat it naked while you're being scanned. And all of these are different equations that different people can make different informed choices about, but you're never getting anything for free. I think the biggest revelation for everyone is that a lot of the stuff that we thought we were getting for free wasn't free. It was free as in data. And that data can have 0 to a lot of consequences based on what they do and how responsibly they handle that data.
So, Lisa, if I'm ordering something on Amazon, then I get ads about it on Instagram. That means that Amazon is tracking me. I mean, that of course is kind of a given, but you have talked in the past about ALEXA, going back to it, and Amazon in general kind of having a wide swath of information about folks due to the different, is it fingers and pies? That sounds wrong now.
Yeah. No, it's what it is. He has his finger in many pies
Yeah. And that's Amazon for sure, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So everyone, I wouldn't say everyone, but the most popular narrative on Amazon is, they're an online marketplace. You can buy things off Amazon. You can do subscribe and save, and it's great. And I think what a lot of people tend to overlook is that Amazon makes a lot of money taking all the data it has about you, all of the times you've had subscribe and save, or all of the purchases you've made, and it packages it and sells it. It's a tremendously lucrative business, and it's a great reason for lots of people to want to do business with Amazon, because they can get access to data sets on how and when people buy, and they can price things accordingly. I mean, we all know that Amazon's prices go up and go down depending on any one of a wide variety of circumstances. And Amazon can do that because they have data to justify it. So it's no surprise that if I buy something, here's an example. I bought a, that actually literally just happened while I was sitting here. I set up a subscribe and save subscription for a brand of vitamins called Smarty Pants Vitamins for myself and my kiddo. And as I loaded a website a minute ago, up popped the ad, because apparently I've already bought the vitamins. Clearly, I want to buy more. But it's not. But the thing is, the ad popped up because somewhere along the line, Amazon sold my data and said, this person has already demonstrated a willingness to repeatedly purchase this product. So let's push more at her, since she's probably temperamentally more likely to do this than something else. I find it both hilarious because I'm not going to buy twice as many vitamins.
Right.
And also like weird. Well, yeah, it's like when you buy a fan off Amazon, Amazon is like, oh, welcome to your new hobby of fan collecting. Here are 5 more you'd like to buy. But, you know, with what happened here with this vitamin ad that just popped up, it was just another reminder that anything I do on Amazon is going to be packaged, sliced, and sold. And somewhere along the line, this website said, yes, I want to buy a tranche of ads that are aimed at people who, you know, have this purchase record and are likely to have an affinity for, you know, health-related products. And so I guarantee you that I'm probably going to get other different vitamin ads or an app about nutrition or something else that goes along because it's associated with that cloud of information that Amazon has and is selling and will loop back and it will just be one big iteration over and over again. The more data there is, the more data I will be served. How I react to that data will add to it. I'll get a different class of ads, on and on it will go.
Yep, absolutely. It's, you know, the good thing is that there are some tracking protections in place that you can set up or that are additions that you can make to your system. But there are just, I think that this story about Snap looking, and Snap is the name of the company that makes Snapchat, Snap looking at different ways of circumventing these privacy rules. There are ways to get around it, and there will continue to be ways to get around it. And so vigilance is important. And I think that with that, you know, we go back to Lisa's new company where I think that, you know, you pay probably for the premium package that also includes some training on privacy protection that you can do to take things even further. But ultimately, there will always be some level of tracking, and we have to just be vigilant about that. Let us.
And we're super dumb. Can I just add to this, Micah? Like,
yeah,
I care about privacy like incredibly, but Pokemon Go says if you give us access to location, we'll let you hatch your eggs faster. And I'm like, oh, opt in. So like, there is no system that is good when humans are involved. Just not.
That's true. And there are trade-offs, right? I mean, there are trade-offs that make sense and are more. They're earning of my yes, and ones that are not earning of my yes, and so I say no.
Mine are irrational. Mine are completely irrational.
Yeah.
It's all based in.
I mean, for all that I complain
dopamine.
about Amazon, I just mentioned that I have subscribe and save set up, and they know a tremendous amount about the milestones that my household has hit. Like the day I signed up for it was called Amazon Mom way back in the day. I think it's since been changed to Amazon Family, but like literally the day I signed up for Amazon Mom, I was like, here we go. They're going to learn so much about me.
And we used to do this in an analog world. Like the old company I worked with did this for grocery stores and for like corner stores, because Coke never knew who bought Coke, but the store did. And then they woto sell that data back to Coke. They'd sell it to Pepsi for competitive reasons. They'd sell it to Lay's potato chips so they could figure out how much it was worth paying to be placed next to Coke at the checkout stand. And the marketing, the money made from marketing, even for magazines, has always been almost more than everything else.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the reason why digital advertising has caused the downfall of so many traditional businesses, because simply because their customers are people who buy ads, and they are delivering a much, much better product to that customer than that customer had ever dreamed of. They're not just happy saying, we're so wonderful and grateful because this magazine has the demographic that we're looking for, and so we're very, very pleased to purchase full page ads in this magazine that research says is typically read by people we envision as our regular customer. That's nice, but what Amazon can do is tell you, here is conversion, here is someone who saw your ad, then went to Amazon and bought the thing that was advertised. That's the thing that says, well, I wish that they had bought Coke instead of the Pepsi product that we were advertising, but it sent this person scurrying to Amazon to buy some sort of old timey real sugar cola. So that means that this place that we bought that ad is a really good place to keep buying ads. And also, this person is a dupe that we can maybe manipulate in the future. That's why digital advertising has so much much power. And that's why Amazon and eBay as well, they're such powerful entities in the advertising business. There are few companies that can actually tell you, not only did they buy this product, but here are other products they were looking for, they looked at before they bought this product, or here's the sort of stuff that was in their basket or in their wish list alongside this product. It took them 3 weeks to put this in the basket, but then to decide that, yes, I really do want to buy this space heater. It's a treasure trove of information that anybody who is marketing anything would be foolish to want to give up.
Yeah, we're not even talking about Google, which is essentially an ad services company with a search engine attached. Like one of my favorite digital time waster activities, if I'm, if I'm doing downtime cycles between cognitively demanding tasks, I'll go look at my ad settings in Google to see what they think I like and who I am, and I try to gauge how accurate or inaccurate it is. And it's really interesting to see how my searches or how the ways they're tracking me has translated into the little buckets that they've put me in and are selling to other people too. And Andy, you make a great point about the accuracy of ads. And I do wonder if there's room for disruption in this space by giving people tools to like juke their stats, as it were, or to change their profiles.
Change their cohorts.
So that yeah, exactly. Change your cohorts and be like, I'm really tired of getting ads for artisanal soda, which is actually a thing I've started getting ads for. And I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by the emergence of this market. Artisanal soda. Why this plague of ads? I would like to start getting ads for regional scotch instead. Like if there's a way for people to play with their data sets and see what data sets prompt what triggers. I think we're going to see some monkeying around in that area just because it's fun and because people do like to play with their self-image, and people are also innately curious about markets and what's out there. They like novelty.
It's kind of wild how easy it is to determine when a service has figured out that I'm queer, because when that happens, the ads that I get are suddenly it's like, okay, they think they know this about me and have started to serve these ads. And that is whenever I think it would be, it's wild how stereotyped many of those kind of advertisements are. It's like
I was about to ask, are you getting a lot of Rainbow Absolute ads now? Is that it?
It's not even. It's basically. I thought our stream cut out. It's basically ads for underwear and ads for shorts and yeah. So it's just like. It's just like behinds on screen. They're not even people on the screen where it's just behinds.
Sounds like they're one of the TikTok game.
And then ads related to, what are those medicines called? Antiviral stuff, antiviral medicine. Yeah. And it's just those over and over and over again. And I think, I'm not bothered that the service knows that about me. What I'm bothered by is this stereotype that suddenly these are the only ads that I right. Yeah. I just want to see behinds all the time. So that is.
Don't we all? But
right. I mean, yeah. If I could, the whole stream would be behinds. But it's it would be nice to be able to change. Like you said, things around and say, I have 2 dogs and you could market some stuff to me about dogs and I would probably end up thinking about buying it. I'm super into technology. You could throw in some gadgets from time to time. It's like space out the behinds. That'll work.
Big Bob's Burgers season 1 with Tina Belcher saying butts.
Folks, we are about to the end of this episode of Mac Break Weekly. But up next are our picks of the week. All right, Lisa, as our guest this week, you get to kick things off with your pick of the week.
So I live about a mile from the San Francisco Bay, a little bit less. We've been doing a lot of beach combing during our unusual times. And I'm also raising a little surfer, as it turns out. So the unexpected new app that I'm honestly surprised I'm into, but really like, is Surfline. Surfline is like this huge website / service that has surf cameras, like over 500 surf cameras from all over the world. They give you tidal conditions. It's locked into your zip code. And in addition to like looking at beautiful cresting waves, I can also now track tidal patterns and know when it's a good day to hit the waves or not. And again, also cannot emphasize this enough. It's so nice to just like flip between cameras and see how the waves are breaking all over the world. It's like both a peaceful and useful app. So that's kind of my sweet spot.
That's super cool. I kind of want to just go there. I'm not a surfer, but that sounds kind of peaceful.
No, I'm just a surfing enabler, but it's been a great app. It makes me feel a little bit more in touch with the tides, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And now you're getting lots of ads for surfboard wax.
Yep.
Andy, what is your pick of the week?
Well, if I've been a little low key today, it's because I had to wake up at the crack of 8:30 in the morning because to get a appointment to get vaccinated. I get my first vaccination tomorrow morning.
Yes.
So. God, that means I got to wake up before 9 2 days in a row. That's going to cost me. So I'm going to recommend. I bought this pin about a month or two ago with the idea that I'm not going to take it out of the package. I'm not going to wear it until I actually like show up my appointment. It's a little enamel pin with the syringe that says "Thanks Science" on it, and it's a really cool pin by a company called Dissent Pins at DissentPins.com. They have a whole bunch of really cool pins like that. In the vaccination line, there is the Thanks Science syringe in two different sizes. The little Band-Aid that you get over an inoculation site. There's that. Ask me about my vaccination. Flu fighter. Also ones that will stand the test of time post COVID. So one says, "I enjoy not having polio." You can play with me. I'm measles free. Thank you for vaccinating your miniature snot factory. And there's a bunch of other ones like in other categories. There's the other one that I bought is it looks like a have you ever seen like one of those medieval mazes, like a meditation maze in a garden, where it's just a circle with this tortuous, torturous set of paving stones in it? So they have one of those, and the distance of that line inside that circle is 1 nanometer, and it's designed to like honor Grace Hopper and her always. This is the distance of 1 nanometer. This is how much an electron can travel. They have the Ruth Bader Ginsburg one. My favorite one. I sent this link to a friend of mine, and he instantly bought 5, uttering a joyous expletive. It's the Jewish Space Laser Corps pin. So. There's a lot to love in this pin collection. Most of them are about $15, and as I said, this is going to be on my collar like tomorrow morning, and then probably I'll be sleeping on it for the next 36 hours in case I get really, really tired after that. But still, I will feel as though I was dressing up for the event.
Yeah, the site had Apple Pay, so I have just ordered one. It's that easy. I can't wait to get my own Thanks Science pin. So thanks, Andy, for sharing that. That's a great pick of the week. Renee Ritchie, what is your pick of the week?
I'm pretty sure that this is a repeat pick, but I want to do it anyway because of Lauren Good's article and because of everything we've been talking about today. And that is the YouTube channel of Jordan Harrod. She does a channel where she explains machine learning, the advantages and the challenges, maybe the detriment sometimes of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and computer vision and all those things. She's a PhD candidate at MIT, and she just does amazing work. If you're into Apple, she just recently talked about the machine learning accelerators in the M1 MacBook. She's also explained how things like Scribble work, the machine learning in Scribble works in the past, and everything about AI biases. And also recently, famously, she made an AI-generated Tom Scott. He does this thing where he takes a couple weeks off every year and he gets people to make videos in his stead. So she generated an AI Tom Scott, fed it a bunch of his scripts, and let it spout some very authentic-sounding gibberish for an entire Tom Scott video. So it's a terrific way to get better informed about the potential limitations, trials, tribulations, and everything else that goes with machine learning. So I can't recommend her channel highly enough.
Yeah. Nice. Everybody should subscribe to that.
It is a great channel.
So right now.
Yeah. My pick of the week this week is an app, a little app that's available for $3.99 called Display Buddy. Display Buddy has solved a problem for me that I didn't realize I had. Or didn't realize could even be solved, I guess is the better way to put that. So I have two Dell Ultra Sharp monitors that I use as my monitors at home. And in order to make adjustments to those, there are these little touch sensitive buttons on the front of the monitors that you press, and you go through all these menus to try and make adjustments to them so you can affect contrast, brightness, etc. Display Buddy lets you control your external displays from your Mac menu bar. So for $3.99, you can actually control the brightness, the contrast, and if you've got a display that has speakers built in or has audio out options, you can also make adjustments to the volume on the display. It works with multiple displays, so I've got two here, and I can very easily change. And you can create presets. So maybe at night you have things brighter or darker, or the contrast is dropped or it's raised, and you can make all sorts of adjustments. And it works with a bunch of LG displays, a bunch of Dell displays, Samsung, Acer, Prism, and BenQ displays, all sorts of different options there. And I think it's fantastic. It's a simple little app that I have installed and have been using to adjust the brightness and contrast values on my monitors without having to go through all those buttons and figure out where the menus are. And then also the cool thing about this is that the developer is like, hey, if this does not work for your displays for whatever reason, if it doesn't work with your monitors, then all you have to do is request a refund and we'll refund you, no problem. So yeah, check out Display Buddy. It's available at displaybuddy.app for $3.99.
It says on this. I'm on the site because I also have a Dell monitor that I really like. It says that hasn't been updated for M1 Max yet, but does it run under Rosetta?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that it didn't work for M1 Max as of yet.
Yeah, it says supports Intel Max, M1 not supported yet.
I have not used it on an M1 Max, so yeah, that part I cannot confirm. It certainly works on the new thing that I meant was it works on Big Sur. Cool. It was updated for Big Sur, but yeah, I don't know if it'll work for M1 Max. But refund anytime within 7 days of your purchase, no questions asked. So we'll have to see if it will offer that. I'd love to see that.
I think I'll just buy it and check it out anyway. This is a good pick because it's very well aligned with my interests. I love the Dell 2415 display a whole lot, and I have like 3 of them. I bought my last one just a few months ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and I've had these ultra sharp displays for so long, and I don't want to get rid of them, even though they're kind of outdated, but they have worked for me just perfectly, and I like having my multiple monitor setup. So along with being able to adjust with the touch bar on my MacBook Pro itself, I can now adjust those monitors too without having to mess around with other tools. So no context switching, as it were. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. All that's left is to say good day to our incredible guests. Lisa Schmeiser, thanks so much for hopping on the show with us today. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Not right now. I just wanted to thank you for letting me hop on. It's always a pleasure to learn from the folks in the industry who are following this stuff and talking about it with you.
Well, I always appreciate an opportunity to hear your brilliance, and I mean that wholeheartedly. Thank you. Renee Ritchie, anything you want to plug? Renee Ritchie at youtube.com/Renee Ritchie.
Sure. So, our mutual friend Georgia Dow has been doing these amazing reaction videos. She just put one up about Black Widow, the trailer today, and her quest for self-identity. And I wanted to get in on this reaction, this hot YouTube reaction trend. So I did a reaction to Steve Jobs' original iPad keynote with a lot of behind the scenes info and how some of it holds up today. And I had a blast. Nowhere nearly as good at doing it as Georgia or Devin Stone or Dr. Mike or anybody like that yet. But I'm going to work on it, Micah, and I will start doing reaction videos that even you will be proud of.
I mean, that one sounds really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing that. WGBH, it's Andy Anatko. Andy, anything you'd like to plug?
Yep, I got my weekly high-tech hidey-ho on WGBH, Boston's NPR station. This week I'm on at Friday at 12:30-ish. Just go to WGBHnews.org. You can stream it live or a little bit later.
Awesome. Sounds good. And of course, you can find me here on the twit.tv network or later today around 8 p.m. Pacific? No, Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can go to totalpartykill.live or just check out my Twitter feed because I play Dungeons and Dragons on the internet almost every Tuesday, sometimes every other Tuesday. Where
Are you a shaman like William Shatner?
I am a druid. I love getting to turn into animals. But yeah, that's the thing I'm plugging this week because you know my Twit TV stuff, folks. Anyway, thank you all for being here for today's episode of Mac Break Weekly. Thank you all out there for joining us for Mac Break Weekly. And until next time, where I will no longer be Micah Sargent, I am Micah Sargent, and this is Mac Break Weekly. Goodbye. Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you would like to laugh while learning about how to take control and take advantage of all of the features that your iOS devices provide, then you should check out iOS Today. The show Rosemary Orchard, my co-host, and I, Micah Sargent, host every week on the Twit Network. It's all things Apple all the time.